Your watch has never counted a single calorie. It isn't built to. There's no sensor on the back of it that measures energy leaving your body, because energy expenditure isn't something a wrist can feel. What the watch has is your heartbeat, a stream of motion readings from an accelerometer, and the numbers you typed in the day you set it up. Your height, your weight, your age, your sex. It takes those inputs, runs them through an algorithm the company has never published, and prints a figure. The figure looks like a measurement. It's a guess wearing the costume of a measurement, and for anyone trying to add muscle on a controlled surplus, the space between those two things is where the whole plan comes apart. Start with the part the watch gets right, because the trap depends on that part being true. Heart rate, it reads well. In 2017, a team at Stanford ran what's still the cleanest test of these devices. 60 people across 7 different wrist trackers. Every reading checked against laboratory equipment. For heart rate, 6 of the 7 came within 5% of the truth, and the Apple Watch sat near the front of the pack, around 2% error. That's real accuracy. If the watch tells you your heart rate is 140, you can believe it's close to 140. People feel that reliability every day, and they trust the device because of it, and they're right to. Then the same study turned to the calorie number, and the floor gave out. Not one of the 7 devices estimated energy expenditure accurately. The best performer in the whole group was off by 27%. The worst missed by 93%. The same wrist that read heart rate within 2% was wrong about calorie burn by a quarter or more, and the researchers were candid that they couldn't fully account for it beyond the obvious point, that heart rate is measured while calorie burn is invented from it. A later review that pooled 56 separate studies landed on an average error around 28%. That figure has held for the better part of a decade, across generations of devices that were each supposed to be the one that fixed it. 28% sounds harmless until you attach it to a day. Take an ordinary daily burn of 2,200 calories. 28% of that is more than 600 calories. 600 calories isn't a rounding error. In the direction that matters for this conversation, it's the entire difference between a real surplus and no surplus at all. It helps to be precise about what a caloric surplus actually is, because the word gets thrown around as though it were simple. A surplus is not a feeling, and it's not a number on a screen. It's a relationship between two quantities, the energy you take in and the energy you spend, and it exists only when the first is genuinely larger than the second, across enough days to matter. Building muscle requires that the body have more material and more energy coming in than it's burning through, a small, steady excess it can spend on new tissue. The lean bulk is just the disciplined version of this, keeping that excess small enough that you add muscle without dragging a pile of fat along with it. The entire method rests on knowing, with reasonable confidence, where your maintenance line sits, because the surplus is defined against that line and nothing else. Now watch what happens when the maintenance line comes from the wrist. A careful lifter wants to do this properly, so he checks his watch at the end of each day and sees that he burned, on average, 2,800 calories. He takes that as his maintenance. He adds a sensible surplus on top, 300 calories, and eats 3,100 a day, confident he's feeding growth. But the watch inflated that 2,800. His true maintenance was closer to 2,200. So the man eating what he believes is a 300-calorie surplus is actually eating a few hundred calories over a number that was already 600 too high, which means he's hovering right around his real maintenance, or even below it. He is not in a surplus. He's been eating at maintenance for weeks while believing every single day that he was feeding muscle. The body responds exactly the way it should to maintenance, which is to say, it does nothing. The scale doesn't move. The lifts crawl. And here the story takes the turn it almost always takes, because the lifter doesn't suspect the watch. The watch reads his heart rate perfectly. It's never lied to him about anything he could check, so it doesn't occur to him that the one number he can't verify is the one that's wrong. He looks for the failure in himself instead. He decides he's a hardgainer. He decides his metabolism is unusual, his genetics are stubborn, that he's one of the unlucky ones who simply can't grow. None of that is true. He was at maintenance the entire time, and the only thing standing between him and the surplus he wanted was a figure on his wrist that was never a measurement to begin with. If you've been eating in a surplus for months with nothing to show for it, you're not a hard gainer. You've just been trusting the wrong number. My Lean Bulk program sets your surplus from your real maintenance, not your watch's guess, and it's the first link in the description. So start it today. The cardio makes it worse, and it makes it worse in the place people least expect. Plenty of lifters keep some cardio in during a bulk, for the heart, for conditioning, for the simple fact that being able to climb stairs is part of being in shape. There's nothing wrong with cardio while bulking, done in reasonable amounts. The problem is what the watch tells you about it. A 40-minute session comes back reading 500 calories burned. The lifter, protective of his surplus, eats those 500 calories back, so the cardio doesn't eat into his gains. But the real cost of that session was closer to 350. He's just eaten 150 calories that he never spent, handed to him by a watch that overestimates steady cardio more than almost anything else it tracks. Do that 4 times a week, and the careful little surplus he built is gone, erased by phantom calories he ate to protect it. There's a second twist here, and it's the part that should bother a lifter most, because it runs in the opposite direction. The watch overestimates cardio, but it underestimates lifting. Resistance training is close to the worst possible case for a wrist sensor. You're holding a bar, your wrist is nearly motionless for the hard seconds that matter. The accelerometer sees almost nothing, and your heart rate during a set of 5 doesn't climb the way it does on a run, even though the muscular work is enormous. So the watch looks at the most productive hour of your week, the hour actually driving the muscle growth, and reports a modest little number. Then it looks at an easy walk and reports a big one. The device systematically tells you that the session that builds you burned less than the session that didn't, which is not just inaccurate, it's backwards. And a person who lets the watch shape his sense of which work matters will come away valuing exactly the wrong things. I want to be careful not to overstate the villainy here, because the watch isn't malicious, and it isn't even badly made. The low-impact tasks were where it struggled most in the Stanford data, sitting in the drifting past 50% error, while the steady rhythmic activities it was tuned for came in tighter. The engineers built a device that does a genuinely hard thing fairly well, and estimating energy expenditure from a wrist is a genuinely hard thing, maybe an impossible one to do precisely. The error isn't a scandal, it's the honest limit of asking a wrist to know something a wrist can't sense. The scandal, if there is one, is only that the number gets printed in the same clean font as the heart rate, with no mark on it to say that one of these was measured and the other was imagined. So the question becomes what a lifter should actually anchor to, if not the wrist, and the answer is older and duller than any device. The body keeps its own ledger, and that ledger is honest. If your body weight is drifting up at 1/4 to 1/2 pound a week, and the weights on your logbook are slowly climbing, you're in a surplus. That's what a surplus looks like from the outside, and no watch reading can override it. If the scale has been flat for 3 weeks, you are not in a surplus, no matter how confidently the watch insists you've been burning 2,800 calories a day. The scale in the logbook and the slow evidence of the mirror are measurements in a way the calorie ring never was. You set your intake, you watch what the body does with it over 2 or 3 weeks, and you adjust the food, not the faith you put in the wrist. This is the part that's almost funny, in a quiet way. People buy the watch precisely to bring rigor to their training, to replace guessing with data, and the one number they lean on hardest is the one number on the device that's closest to a guess. They'll trust the scale less than the watch, when the scale is the honest instrument, and the watch is doing arithmetic on assumptions. The rigor was available the whole time. It was sitting on the bathroom floor. None of this is a reason to take the watch off. That's worth saying plainly, because the easy version of this argument ends with throwing the thing in a drawer, and that's the wrong lesson. As a heart rate monitor, it's excellent, and heart rate is genuinely useful for managing how hard your conditioning runs, for watching your resting rate trend down as your fitness improves, for keeping your easy days easy. As a consistency tool, it earns its place too. The rings are a behavioral trick, and the trick works. People who close them move more than people who don't, and movement is real even when the number attached to it isn't. The watch is a good coach for the habit of showing up. It's just a poor accountant, and you don't want your accountant's numbers deciding how much you eat. The fix, if you want to keep the watch, is to demote one number while keeping the rest. Let the heart rate inform your training. Let the rings nudge your consistency. Let the trends tell you whether your fitness is moving in the right direction over months. But take the daily calorie figure and treat it as what it is, a rough estimate with a fourth of its value potentially made up, and refuse to let that estimate set your intake. Your maintenance gets calculated from your own results over time, from the way your weight actually behaves when you eat a known amount for a few weeks. That's a real measurement taken with a real instrument, and it costs nothing you don't already own. The man from earlier, the one who decided he was a hard gainer, didn't have a metabolism problem and didn't have a genetics problem. He had an instrumentation problem. The day he stopped trusting the calorie number and started trusting the scale, his maintenance turned out to be 600 calories lower than he'd been told. His real surplus had been 0. And the moment he ate to the scale instead of to the wrist, the weight started moving and the lifts followed. Nothing about his body had changed. The only thing that changed was which number he believed. That's not a transformation. It's just what happens when you anchor to the scale instead of the screen. My lean bulk program runs you through exactly that, week by week. So click the link in the description and start before you waste another month feeding a surplus that isn't there. The heart rate was always real. The calorie count was always a guess, dressed as a fact, and the body had been keeping the accurate count the entire time in the one place its owner kept forgetting to look.